Hello, and it's great having you back for another Tutorial Tuesday. Thank you so much for your prayers and your well wishes while I've been severely under the weather for 2 weeks or so. And just knowing that I was going to be back with you today because I'm feeling better, just put another wind in my sails and excited for today's tutorial. This one's going to have a wonderful elements to it that are simple and beginner friendly, yet add an extra feature in this clasp. That is a coiled clasp with these extension hoops on it. Loops, hoops, loops. They're interchangeable in these tutorials. So you can attach 2 chain links and for double the fun in your next project, whether it's a necklace, this bracelet. I think this is just a wonderful clasp that allows you to do that. Nothing wrong with a single line of chain link for a bracelet, but come on now, 2 is even better. So we're going to work on this today. I'm going to teach you how to do this little simple chain link and wire wrapped beads. I love a single wrapped bead. They're so simple, they're so basic, but I love them for all the projects. It just adds a little something to whatever you might be working on. And I have this pattern. You can come up with what you want, but I'm going to show you how to do all these little things, and especially this wonderful double coiled clasp, S-clasp, so you can double the fun for your bracelet and necklaces. Let me go over some basic supplies that you're going to need. Bail pliers, flush cutters, some round nose pliers, believe it or not, and some chain nose pliers. I am going to be using 16 gauge for the clasp, and then 18 gauge is going to make up our little links. And I have chosen a few. Did I miss any? Oh no, almost lost that one. I've got 6 4mm green aventurine beads. Now this could be whatever you want. You don't even have to use 4mm. You could go down to 3, up to 6, whatever. That's your preference on the look that you're going for. I have already made a bunch of links. Aren't they cute? So simple, right? I've gone ahead and left a few of these 4.5 centimeter lengths of 18 gauge wire to show you how to make this cute little link. Very easy with just a few basic tools that you'll use for all kinds of jewelry projects. My favorite tool is the bail pliers. It's great for easy loops, consistent loops with a nice handle with various sizes for many different size hoops and loops. So let me show you again. I did make this bigger. I think I used the 4mm bail previously, and it just seemed a little too, I wanted something fine as possible that I could get, delicate as possible. So I scaled down to the 3mm bail, which is the first bail on my pliers, and started with putting my pliers right on the end so you can't really even see it, but it's there. Pressing near the bail. And I'm going past, wrapping it around so it's coming on top of the wire and past the meeting point. Because in this link, I want these little loops to be as round as possible. So I'm going past the meeting point. So you have something going on like this. This is where your clips, your snips are going to come in handy. And I'm going to flush cut this end so I get the most perfect circle possible. Now, do you have to do this? No, but it's just a little extra step that I take to get a nice round loop. And I'll just take my chain nose pliers and just press it down. You saw that I started with the bail pliers, but I can't just spin it around and still get the same size. And I want the same size for all those 3 little loops. So this is where I'm going to transition over to some just basic round nose pliers. These are just like the most cheap ones that you can find at Michael's. They did the job better than my fancy Xeron ones. Place what you've got so far on your pliers, making sure it's nice and level as well before you get ready to make your next bend. We're going to be bending around the opposite direction and press it just past, and that is on top of that first loop. Take that off your pliers, turn it upside down. So now that it's the loop that was on top is now underneath. And the reason that I'm doing that is because you see with these round nose pliers, and this is one of the reasons why I don't use them often, is they are graduated, and you will get loops. You'll get these stacked loops on here that one will be bigger than the other, and I have just found that turning it over and making the loop on the bottom gets the most uniform loops that you could get with round nose pliers. I really want to use my bail pliers, but I can't. So I'm using what I've got to make it work and get the cutest little round loops possible. And you should have something like that so far. Maybe it needs a little pressing down. You've seen me often use my bail pliers to clamp things right in this little spot. I love it. Put that right back on your pliers. Make sure it's even level as you can get it. And then press around. Take it off your pliers. Back on. And then you can use your fingers to press that last little bit as much as it will go so we get a nice round shape. I'm just making sure my line of loops is nice and straight. Back with flush cutters just to trim this end off right where that loop meets that center loop. And I'll take some chain nose pliers. As you can see how it's elevated just a little bit? Chain nose pliers to put everything in line again. There we go. Now, the first, or maybe several times that we do this, like it did for me, it would be a little out of line, cattywampus. Does anybody use the word cattywampus? I use cattywampus. You can use that same great little place on your bail pliers. Stick it in there, and if anything is not in line, it's a very gentle, safe way to make sure that your little loops are in line, because I've done it with this and it slips, or it presses too hard or whatever and messes up your loops. So this maintains a nice safe, because it's resting against the bottom. See, it's resting down in the bottom, and it's got two long, nice and even heavy edges. They can just gently press that if it's out of alignment. And if you need, you can gently press on the sides as well to straighten anything out. I love this part on the bail pliers. I use it all the time. So we have created one little link. I'm going to show you one more time, and then I'll show you how to put it all together with a wire wrapped bead. And then we're going to get to that fun clasp that's really going to give us double the fun. This part might not be necessary of making it go past and then clipping it, but I just found that it gave the nicest round loop I could come up with. So if you don't want to do it, it's not totally necessary. I just like to make things more difficult for myself. And once you really get the hang of this, this is going to be super fast. Lots of times when I'm making jewelry. I'll just put a YouTube video on, a movie or something like that, and before I know it, I've got everything I need, because you build this muscle memory. Hope everyone's Christmas was wonderful. You're excited about a new year. I'm ready for a new year. I'm going to attempt to join a gym. We'll see how long that works. We're just making that final loop, bringing it all around. Now, you noticed or you remember that in the beginning I told you 4.5 centimeters. And the reason for that little more, is so you can bend it with your fingers. You can get away with 4 centimeters. You would just have to use some pliers to be able to grasp that last little bit. I have done it with 4 centimeters. It's just a little more tricky having to use 2 pliers to form that last little loop. I think I'm going to pinch this in just a little bit. And there, in no time, you've got another little link. Okay, let's start stringing these together. They're just as simple as opening a jump ring or any loop that you would make, like say ear wires, and start putting them together. And I'm going to follow this pattern that I have, and it really is just as simple as opening a loop, attaching a link, closing that loop, and just doing it again until you've got some chain link going here, and then we'll add a wire wrapped bead. I love single wire wrapped beads. They're just so cute, and they add such a nice little feature to whatever it may be. So I'm using 22 gauge, dead soft, in copper, of course. That's what I usually just do tutorials with. Maybe 4 inches or so, 3 or 4 inches, just something where you can slide your bead on. I don't know if you can see it, but the light, which is a round light, makes a little circular reflection, and it looks like the hole on the beads, and I can never find out where the hole is on these stupid beads. A little thing that I do just to hold the bead on there while I'm working on this end is I'll just put a little bend on there to hold it there as I take my round nose pliers. Now I don't know exactly where that is. Maybe 1/4 of an inch in. Bend that wire back to yourself. Turn your pliers so that it's sitting in that bend like this at an angle. And then bend the wire back over. Oops, I want it on the top. What we're doing is making that little loop at the top. Oops, sorry about that. Bring that on around your pliers. Try not to get it all bent up like I just got mine bent up. Now that you've got a little loop on there, that's what you have put together so far in the pattern that you're putting together. Slide that on there. Take some chain nose pliers and clasp right on that loop. What the? I'm just going to start bending that around. You can use pliers to do this or just your hands as I'm doing. I think I'm going to go for about 3 loops here. Three wraps, I'm sorry. 3 wraps. Try to use the correct terminology. I think can get one more on that side. Just so that it's 3 basically on every side. And then I'll flush cut that end. Take chain nose pliers and tuck it in. And there you go. Now you saw I originally bent that back. I'm going to bend it straight again and do the same thing on the other side with round nose pliers. About 1/4 inch in. That's on mine. What we're doing, this measure of how much you put it in, if I went all the way in, this is the gap that we're going to make that we would fill with the wraps. So if you want like a bunch of wraps, say that's the look you're going for, move it all the way down into the thickest part of the barrel here. But I don't need it super big. I do want about 3 wraps like I have been doing. So I find that about 1/4 inch in on mine works for that. And you might have to figure out what works on yours. I'm making that first bend backwards. Turn your pliers that's in that little bend. This is the barrel that we're getting ready to wrap around. So envision where that little loop is, and that's where you put that barrel, and we're getting to wrap around it. Straighten it up. Over and around. Turn your pliers, so you're kind of making a straight line here. Envision this loop that we're getting ready to make in line with this one over here. So a nice straight wire wrapped bead. Get your bead out of the way and wrap on around. Now, before you start making your extra wraps, don't do like I often do. I get so into doing the wrap that I don't connect another link. Oh my gosh. And then once you do that, it's jacked up and you have to start over. I'm going for 3 wraps. And if it kind of sits on top of the bead, that's okay too. Kind of surrounds the bead a little bit, the wraps. I could like that look as well. I think I can bring it around just a little bit more. Here we go. Flush cutting the end. And tuck in the end, put it to bed. Press on around if you've got a little warpage or anything like that to get a nice round wrap that is encasing this bead. And that is the most basic wire wrapped bead that you can incorporate into so many other projects. That's one good thing about this tutorial. You're going to learn a chain link, some basic wire wrapping of beads, and a fantastic coiled S-clasp that can accommodate 2 strands of links. Love that. It's so wonderful. Each one of these links measures a 1/2 inch, so it makes for a very slinky chain for whatever you're using it for. I think usually I try to stick around a 1/2 inch for links just to keep that slinkiness and the movement. You start to get bigger than that, and then it seems very stiff around your wrist or your neck, whatever you're using it for. So try to stay around a 1/2 inch for whatever links that you come up with. There is something that you could do to adjust the size of your bracelet. Say you don't want to make a bunch of links, or maybe you made a certain amount of links and it's either too small or too big, whatever. You can add, instead of connecting these right directly to one another, you could put some jump rings in between to adjust a size. Maybe jump rings from here to here to the beads or something. Say you didn't make enough links, you don't feel like making no links. You can adjust this size with some jump rings. So I think that adds a nice extra feature that you can adjust this and make it customizable to whatever your needs are. I'm going to show you the one more wrapped bead here and add another link, and then I'll work through the rest of the basic chain, and then we're going to come back and I'm going to show you how to make this wonderful clasp. Again, I roughly cut 3 to 4 inches. Can't even see these beads on this green background. Let's go for this dark one. Right there in the middle, and then I'll bend just to hold it in there. Round nose pliers, about 1/4 inch in. I'm just eyeballing that. Push it back to yourself. Angle your pliers. And then push back over top, the top barrel. Look down on top of your work like this and pull the wire nice and securely around the barrel of your round nose pliers. Now, before we make those wraps, this is where we connect. Slide it down and it'll snap right in there. Chain nose pliers to hold that, lock that loop in place as we put, what I'm doing is 3 wraps. You do as much as you want. Trim and tuck. Go on around the wrapping if you got a little wonkiness, which I often have wonkiness. I'm going to bend that back out straight. And getting ready to form the wrap on the other side. The other thing that I forgot to show you on this one is that I lined it up so that this first loop is kind of in this profile. We want the loops going in the same direction. Got it? And I'm snugging the barrel right down on that bead as much as I can. Pushing back, turning the pliers. Don't bend it until you get it nice and straight, so we get a nice straight loop. Bending it over that top. Bending on around. Nice and snug near the barrel for a nice round loop. And then connect another link. We're going to lock that loop in with our chain nose pliers. And put those 3 matching loops in. Wraps, 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 Carrie. I think you all know what I mean. But I want to make sure that even people that are if you're just learning, I want to make sure that I'm using the correct terminology. So when you watch other videos, you know what in the world I'm referring to, or what someone else might be referring to. There's so many great jewelers and artists on YouTube. Take advantage as much as possible. What I did was trim and tuck. And I just kind of go on around the wrap, make sure it's nice and even and secure on all sides. I've got a nice little wire wrapped bead. Aren't they cute? I love wire wrapped beads, just single wire wrapped beads. Okay, so I'm going to work through the rest, and we're going to come on back around when you see me again. We're going to make this clasp. Get ready. Something to help you out a little bit is make an assembly line. Make all your links that you're going to need. Remember, each one measures about 1/2 inch. Cut your lengths for wrapping your beads. Gather your beads that you want to use, and then just make an assembly line. Once you get all your elements laid out and ready to go, you will just bust right through this link. Okay, I'm back after finishing 2 lines of chain with some wonderful little wire wrapped beads. And now it's time to show you this wonderful coiled S clasp that can attach 2 lengths of chain. I love how it gives you that ability to do that. Grab your 16 gauge wire to make this wonderful clasp. Now, I do not know how much wire that I specifically used because I made this right off the coil. I'm gonna guess that maybe if you want to cut a piece off, maybe 6 to 8 inches will give you enough to play around with. But the more I have done jewelry, the more I will use the wire right off the spool. When I first started, I thought it was very cumbersome, right? So if you feel like you need to cut a piece, give yourself about 6 to 8 inches to work with. But if you're comfortable with it, you can just pull it right on out, flush cut it. Take bail pliers, and we're going to use the 4th step, which is, hold on, 2, 3, 4, 5 millimeters. I have to think it through each time and every time I use this. We're going to use this 4th step, which is 5 millimeters. Place it on your wire and give yourself a little tail. And I usually start with this barrel that I'm going after up towards myself, up towards the ceiling, and I start turning in like this and keeping it nice and tight. Now, obviously, I can't turn anymore because this tail is in the way, so you're just going to take it out and reinsert so that tail is not in the way. All right, and I'm going for 4 wraps. So I've got 4, and I'm going to keep wrapping until they are extended out on either side. Maybe take it off the pliers and cut yourself a tail on that side as well. Before I get to making the little loops, I just want to make sure it's as nice and seamless as possible, and that it's nice and even as well. See how there's like a tiny little gap right there? I just want to make sure that's nice and closed up as best as I can get it. And then, and I forgot to tell you that you'll need a ruler, but you need a ruler. I even forgot because I had to go get one. And we are going to cut ourselves. Now, I usually, for this part, I have like a bead mat that's got it built into that, but I'm not disrupting my mess on my other table for this. Okay. I'm kind of trying to visualize where they crisscross right through the barrel of this coil and measure out 1 centimeter and then trim that down. Same for the other side. I'm going to use, it's like I said, the first bail, which is 3 millimeters, and I find that 1 centimeter is just perfect to get a nice finished loop. Again, I'm using that first bail, which is 3 millimeters, to make these little loops on the end that are going to connect the chain links that we made. Now, the 16 gauge is a little, sometimes it wants to pop out of the bail, and it is going to need some hand strength to do this, but you can do it. Now, see, it's not lined up totally straight, so just grab some chain nose pliers and straighten it out a little bit. And I can come back later and close that up because we'll be attaching the wires, attaching the chain anyway, so. And doing the same thing on the other side. First bail, 3 millimeters. And remember earlier I said I usually, the bail that I want to access, I usually have it facing up to the ceiling because I want to turn my hand in this way. For me, it's the most comfortable. Very steadily, trying to keep it straight in line, visualizing that, looking down at this other coil here. I want it to meet up with that other coil. And if they don't quite match up, see how they're just a little off? You can get that bail in there. And I think I've got them matched up now. Straighten them out a little bit. You can also take your pliers and see how one is just slightly up that way. Press it and wiggle it just past. And then it should slide back in alignment. So we've got a nice little coil. It's got these two little loops on the end that I'll show you right now how they attach. It's just like how we did the chain. Oh, we don't want to do that. Oh my gosh. Lord. You just open up one of the links. One of the loops. Slide on your link that you have put together. And close that loop. Do the same thing on the other side. I'm going to take you through again how to make this little coiled end. Come on, isn't that cute? Let me take you through one more time, and then I'll show you how to do that simple S-clasp that's going to attach it all together. Again, almost got the 18 gauge. My end is flush. I am using the fourth step, which is 5 millimeters, with the bail up towards the ceiling. I'm going to start turning my hand in this direction. And one thing I forgot to mention is make the tail go on the outside of the wire so you can build your wraps going that direction. You'll be sure not to run out of space on your barrel. I've met that spot of no return, so I've got to take it off and place it back in there. And I'm holding very firmly so my wraps are nice and tight and uniform. It kind of, not only am I turning in, I'm also pulling this hand this way and this hand that direction. So I'm pulling nice and tight to get nice little wraps. And go slow. There's no rush here. So I've got my 4 wraps, and I'm going to keep turning until they are going out opposite directions of each other. And just trim a section. You could measure this out to begin with, that 1 centimeter that we're going for, but I just find it a little easier to do it this way. I'm looking for easy. I'm just placing it on any centimeter that's on my ruler, kind of visualizing this cross point of these 2 tails on one of the markers for a centimeter, and trimming with my flush side a centimeter out. Do the same on the other side. All right, back to our bail pliers. I want to make sure this is right first before I get started in making loops. Anytime you see something that's not quite right in a phase, in a step of your project, fix it before you move on. I just want these nice and parallel. Everything else looks pretty good. First step, because I want to mimic the size of the loop in the chain link. Right on the end there. Take some hand strength because you don't want it to slip out. You want to keep it nice and straight to meet up with that first loop, or the line in the coil there. You can always come back afterwards and straighten with your chain nose pliers or whatnot. Bleeding somewhere. The world. Somewhere I am bleeding, and I have, right there. Must have poked myself. Fun. Well, you know, as an artist, as a jewelry maker, we're hard on our hands. Slowly, because it's taking a lot of hand strength, turning that in so it meets up with that outer coil. You can use your bay pliers, you can use your round nose pliers. We just want to get these matched up as best as we can, and that they're nice and straight. Sometimes you can do that, sometimes you can do this. There's lots of different little things you can do to get things to line up. I think that's gonna work. All right, so we've got a matching side here. Let's attach this too. Just gonna just bend one out. Slide on. Slide on one of our chain links. Kind of want to go at this going in the right direction. And we're going to bend out the other side. Make sure we got it. And slide on the other chain link. Now we are ready to go to make that little S clasp that can be used in so many different things. Once you get this little S clasp, this little infinity clasp, you can use the shape, you can use this design in so many different things that's not only beautiful, but functional. For this little hook, it's kind of like a shepherd's hook or an S clasp, however you want to say it. I hear many different terms. Let's make sure our wire is flush cut. I'm going to use my bail pliers and using the same barrel, which is the 4th step 5mm, to match this coil so it fits in there nicely. Right on the end, and bend around. So you've got a little loop like that. I will slide this other side of the barrel in there so I can still use the 5th step on the other. It's not a snug fit, but it's going to hold it while we wrap this around. And we want to keep it level. And kind of just pull it around a little bit more. Try to get it off your pliers. If you've got a good loop, it doesn't want to come off. I'm just going to trim that. Turn your form around, and it's still on this 4th step. We're going to bend this little tail out and push it against the 3rd step to get that little bend, that little hook that kind of hangs out a little bit. Pressing it against that 3rd step. So now we have a little bend out. I'm just going to trim that. We don't need all that hanging out. Oh, come on, that is so adorable. I use this little manicure file, which you can use whatever file that you have, just to soften this edge. So you should have a little something like this shape here. And we are going to just open this loop like we've been doing the whole time and slide on one of your coils. Close that loop up, make sure it's nice and tight. The other coil will wrap right around and slide right in that little S clasp, and you have made a double-stranded wire wrap bracelet. So adorable. I love the delicateness of a very simple design in the chain link. I love single wire wrapped beads, and this clasp takes your design and makes it double the fun. Love that. So incorporate this into maybe a bracelet you've already made and you're like, oh man, I just love this design. I love the way it looks. I wish there was more of it, right? Incorporate this clasp and double up your chain link. Makes for a great look. And interesting, the clasp itself is a design feature all on its own. Really, really like that. Well, again, as always, I have been looking so forward to being back with you. As soon as I started feeling better, I was excited. I was already working on, even while I was sick, I was working on this chain link and thinking about presenting it to you and hoping you'd have fun making it as well. Remember, I just made up a pattern. I had 3 links and a bead and a link and a bead. You can come up with whatever pattern you want. You forget the beads. You don't have to put them in if you don't want. If you just love just the metal look all the way around. Another feature that you could use to adjust the size. Don't connect them right directly to each other. Put some jump rings in between and you can extend the size if needs be. Say you don't feel like making any more links, right? And you have some jump rings on hand. I did happen to buy these because I didn't feel like making no jump rings. But I didn't end up using them. But you can always do that. Go ahead and order some. I've got a couple more links left over. Maybe I'll make some earrings to match. It makes for a great link that it is simple and delicate, yet it's really, really strong. I also, for this one that I pre-made, I put through the tumbler. I made all the individual links and I put them through the tumbler, including the clasp, just to really strengthen them and shine them up. And all I had to do was attach the beads to make the pattern. So that is something that you can do to really finish off your piece, is put it through a tumbler. I've got a YouTube short where I demonstrate using the tumbler. So go back and look for that and click on something else. Make some more jewelry today. I'd love to hang out with you. See you next week for Tutorial Tuesday.